Hey everybody, welcome to the Bookening. My name is Nathan Albertson. I'm your humble and obedient host. I've got some friends here today with me, the same ones that I've had now for nigh on over 130, 40, 50 episodes. We got
That's right.
Brandon Chasteen over there.
Hey.
Looking very dignified. How you doing today, Brandon?
Doing very well, Nathan.
What is in your cup?
Oh, this cup here?
Yeah, or what is on your cup, rather?
Whiskey.
Whiskey, yeah.
Quotes from literature.
Yeah.
I got this for Christmas from my mother-in-law.
Well, why don't you give the quote, and then we'll see if Jake can say what the quote is from.
Uh-oh.
Or me.
Marley was dead, to begin with.
This,
Jake?
Dickens.
Yeah.
Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
My favorite.
I'm going to go with a news report about the death of Bob Marley.
No, Jake is right.
Jake is right, okay.
Here's one. This has been a book that was requested of us, and we actually had on the list and then took off. There's
Camus.
a clue. What?
The Stranger, Camus.
Good job.
What-
Mother died today, or maybe yesterday. That's the quote.
Yep.
All
Okay,
right.
cool.
You want more? Here you go. This is going to be more who raises their hands first.
Okay.
Happy families are all alike. Yep. Nathan.
It's Tolstoy, Anna
Yeah.
Karenina.
Yep.
Let's just play this game with hands raised.
All right. And see how many times Jake can hurt his knuckles. Call me Ishmael.
Oh, man.
Moby Dick.
Yeah, it's Moby Dick.
Slow reflexes.
It was a pleasure to burn. Nathan.
Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been...
Great Gatsby.
Yeah, very good.
Man.
Nathan's running away
He's
with this.
destroying me.
You'll get one.
As Gregor Samsa awoke one morning from uneasy dreams, he found...
The Metamorphosis.
Very good.
Kafka.
Here's one that's difficult. I would have gotten this one.
You would have. Okay.
You could have gotten them all.
For a long time, I went to bed early.
Is that it?
Yep.
A long time. I went to bed early.
Make sure I'm right here.
I don't know what this one is. Kafka was the first one that I wasn't going to get second. But this one...
Well, you would have gotten it because if he would have finished...
I'll
the
give you a
sentence,
clue.
he
You
would
want
have
a clue?
said He'd transformed into a cockroach or something.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's in translation is how we know it.
I read it in German is my problem.
Okay, yes. That's a good excuse, I guess. As excuses go.
Let me adjust my monocle.
I'll give you the first word. Want me to?
Wait, we read it in translation?
We've never read it.
Is it Russian?
I have read it. No.
Is it French?
Yes.
Madame Bovary?
No.
Baudelaire?
No.
What are the other famous French things, Jake? Les Mis?
I don't think you're going to get it.
Okay.
It's more recent than that.
No idea.
This guy never got out of his bed. He was rich, wealthy, the author.
The author never got out of his bed.
A cookie plays an essential role in the first chapter.
Oh, what's his face?
The remembrance of things past.
Yeah. Proust.
Yep. Proust. Here you go. I am an invisible man. Jake got
The Invisible Man.
No.
Ralph Ellison's not.
I'm so good.
Yeah. Here's another hard one. Ready?
Yep.
Actually, I'm going to do a blank here. Blank said she would buy the flowers herself.
Blank said she would buy the flowers herself.
All right. I'll do it again, but one more word in there. Mrs. Blank said she would buy the flowers herself.
Mrs. Dalloway.
What'd you say?
Mrs. Dalloway?
Yeah, Mrs. Dalloway.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Famous literary Mrs.
All right, here we
got
go.
that one.
Many years later, as he faced the firing squad, Colonel Aureliano.
Garcia. 100 Years of Solitude.
Yes.
Wouldn't have got that one.
All right, here you go. If you really want to hear about it, the first thing you'll probably...
My boy, Holden.
Yeah, that's Holden.
Sheesh.
And what my lousy childhood was like, my parents, David Copperfield, all that stuff. All right. I am a sick man. I am a spite.
Oh, is it Notes from the Underground?
Yep. Man, there are a lot of these. It was love at first sight. That could be anything.
It was Love at First Sight. Catch-22.
Yeah, very good. That's one I have not read. Here you go. It was the best of times.
Tale Two Cities.
Okay. You better not never tell nobody but God.
Oh, is that like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, or
Yes. No, it's not Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry.
is it about
It's one of those.
one of those kinds of things? Cry the
Yeah.
Beloved Country, maybe? I don't know.
I think it's... Let me make sure I'm right about this before I tell you. Yeah, it's The Color Purple. I don't know why.
Yeah, it was the one guess that I was going to make, and then I was going to be embarrassed to get it wrong. So
You got to take a risk to win into random quiz
failed
thing.
to take the risk.
124 was spiteful, full of a baby's venom.
124 was spiteful, full of a baby's venom. Wow.
Beloved by Toni Morrison.
Oh, I've not read it.
A screaming comes across the sky. I want to make sure I'm right. Yep.
Brave New World?
No. Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon.
Yeah.
It's the only Pynchon I've read.
Started that and never finished it.
No, I take that back. I've also read V.
I've started the cry of Lot, whatever.
Crying of Lot 49.
Yeah, and not finished it.
It was a bright, cold day in April.
1984.
Yep. It is. We'll start with...
This is golf.
All this happened, more or less.
The fewer points.
All this happened more or less. Oh, I should know that.
It's a famous opening. I didn't know this one, though, because I've never read... I have famously never read this guy. And also famously don't ever want to read this guy.
All this happened more or less. Yeah, I know that. I think I've read it. Have I read it?
Yeah, it's Slaughterhouse 5 by
Slaughterhouse
Kurt
5.
Vonnegut.
Yep.
All right. Nathan,
Yes.
put your hands behind your back. Give
Okay.
Jake a chance here, because you're going to both know this. It is a truth. Jake.
Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice.
Yay! I got some points.
Very well done, guys. Those are the quotes there.
In order for me to get a point, Nathan has to have his hands behind his back, and I have to have my hand
Right up there.
almost already raised.
That was fun.
Well, I think Jake would have done better if... I mean, like, I bought my girlfriend for Christmas some postcards that had some famous literary quotes, and
You guys do that on dates for fun?
I don't know that we do it on dates for fun, Jake, but
Nerd.
we do it every night for fun. No. I don't know. I've been in situations where opening lines of novels. I've also run the Bookening's stupid Twitter account at times in my life, and I've just had to play with the most famous quotes from the most famous things a lot in my life. So there's things like that stupid opening of 1984. It was a bright, cold day, which I've seen 1,000 times, even though it's not a particularly memorable
Yeah,
opening.
there's nothing special about that.
Right. But for some reason, you'll come across like calendars and stuff in your Barnes and Nobles that will have, it was a bright, cold day. Like,
Yeah.
I guess because they can't find a good quote in 1984 because Orwell, for all his famous, awesome, incisive criticism of how to write,
Not the
actually
most
wasn't
quotable.
that great of a writer. Wasn't a very quotable one in any case.
No.
So, yeah.
His little essay on writing, pretty great.
Yeah, no, he understood language and its uses and misuses about as well as anybody, but his actual style is just a little bit
Dry.
And
Yep.
I've actually seen somebody, I want to say they took that essay and then they applied the rules of the essay to that essay, and they just like sarcastically went through and showed how taking Strunk
I
and
think
White,
I've seen that too.
cutting
yeah.
needless words from Strunk and White kind of a deal,
Yeah,
which you
yeah.
can, I've done. I have actually read through E.B. White's
Yeah,
little
and
essay at the end and in my brain just like been applying all the rules and seeing like fail,
Yeah.
which really only teaches you that great artists know
how to
exactly
break the rules.
when and how to break the rules.
Yep.
It doesn't teach you that Strunk or that White was a failure for
No,
not
not at
omitting needless words from his essay.
Yeah,
Not at all.
but man, is there a world full of people out there that think that that's the lesson?
Mm-hmm.
Drives me crazy.
That there is a world full of people out there that think that's the lesson.
Yeah, just like this. I may have posted this on our Slack feed. Some stupid essay about this guy thinking just because he was bored by Shakespeare, therefore Shakespeare's bad.
Yeah. That's the nadir. How do you say that word? Nadir? Nadir?
Yeah.
It's one of those words that I read a lot, but I don't hear
I
pronounced
think it's
a lot.
nadir.
Nadir. That's the nadir of criticism when you see those kinds of things where it's just like, I found this boring. I found this erotic. I found this exciting. And so therefore, I'm going to take that as the fact, and then I'm going to extrapolate a whole logical essay from that, like using that as my
Premise.
The first point of my syllogism is that this is boring. This is erotic.
It's
this is
just
whatever.
junk, yeah.
It's junk. And that actually is a lot of modern scholarship, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's a lot of people who, well, today, and this may be particularly an American thing, like when I'll be arguing with people about quality of certain literature, they'll be saying, well, that's just your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, some opinions matter. But like, that's just your opinion.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I've read a lot of books. Oh, yeah, it's just your opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. We're not going to get anywhere here.
You've read 5 books in your life, and 3 of them were Hardy Boys books.
Yeah, and so
but please,
Right.
But we've all been taught,
the Joe comics.
we've all been taught since grade school that every opinion matters just the same. And so if you think that the Hardy Boys or something is just as great as literature as Tolstoy, then you get to say that. And
Right.
what am I to say? How can you prove it?
Yeah, for some reason, this connection is a little tenuous, but it reminds me of one of my sons yesterday having trouble with the Rubik's Cube and him complaining to me that he was doing it right, but he couldn't solve it. And so something was wrong with the cube.
Right.
It's like, buddy, it's a logic puzzle. If you do it right, you solve it every single time. There is no, if you are not solving it, is because you are not doing it. The definition of not being able to solve it is that you are doing it wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
And he just like wouldn't accept it. I was just like, man, you just need to shut up, be humble, and accept the fact that you're doing it wrong. Show me how you're doing it. I will show you how you're doing it wrong. And then we can fix it, and then you can solve the puzzle. But the puzzle will not be solved if you stubbornly assume that doing it the wrong way should get you the right result.
Yeah. There's a little thing that I did a couple of years ago that I noticed about myself that really stuck in my head, which is I got on, this is just a tiny little thing that happened in my life, but it's always stuck with me. I got on a scale. I saw that I had gained 5 pounds, and I just said, "You stupid scale." And
You gotta be wrong. Scale.
what's wrong with this scale? And it wasn't until like a minute later that it occurred to me, like, wait a second, Nathan, it's not the scale's fault. Like, I think there might be other factors at play besides this dumb scale that's betraying you here.
Yeah. Tornadoes and Oreos.
Well, that brings us to the point of today's episode, which is I want to talk a little bit about how we criticize things on the Bookening. Okay,
Sounds
guys?
good, Nathan.
And I'm gonna we got a letter or a Facebook or whatchamacallit. We got a Twitter DM from our good friend Eric, longtime listener, and he says this. And I'm just gonna read this. I'm gonna let you guys respond however you want.
Yeah.
So he has just listened to our Mice and Men episode. I thought you made some interesting comments today. Said that some books, like Of Mice and Men, have been analyzed and reanalyzed from every perspective, and so you sometimes don't have much new to say. That sounds reasonable, but ... and then new paragraph ... Who exactly is your audience? Do you want to be a help to the homeschooling parents that haven't been reading literature reviews for the last 10 years? To those that have gone decades without thinking about the book? You don't have to be novel to be helpful. I'm sure you understand your audience better than I do, but I'd ask you to try not to be bored with helping us normal folks. I'm not saying that there was a ton more to say about this particular book, but when people tune in because they think they should know something about a book and they find bored Nathan talking about how he's bored about talking about this book, well, nothing is more boring than talking about being bored. Find something interesting or scale back the podcast.
Yikes. Shots fired.
Shots
Eric.
fired. No. Eric's our friend. Although I did feel a little shots fired-y when I read that, I will admit. But I think this is an interesting thing worth discussing because we have a particular philosophy of how and why we do the show and what the show is supposed to be. I don't know that we've ever actually articulated that on mic. Maybe we have.
I mean, you can listen to our 130 some odd episodes
And figure it out. Yeah.
And piece together a philosophy.
Right.
But actually articulating it. This is the vision statement for Bookening.
Let's start with Why is a famous book about like entrepreneurship kind of stuff. And today we're going to start with Why for the Bookening. Why does the Bookening exist? What are we trying to do? And how might people misconstrue that or have the wrong expectations? And how can we help them with that?
Or I'll do you one better. Why is the Bookening?
Why is the Bookening? Yes.
Quote.
Thanks, Strax.
Thanks, Rex.
You're welcome.
All right. Take it away, fellas.
That's a big question, Nathan.
I know.
You're our fearless leader, so you should answer it.
I don't want to answer it.
You're punting.
As our fearless leader, I command you to answer it.
Okay. Thanks.
Now let's work through this. I mean, I think it's not like we've articulated. We don't have a big vision statement hanging on the wall that we're looking at.
We don't. Well, listen, I think that let's start with this. This podcast began as three friends who love books.
Yes.
Wanting to sit down and discuss those books and not wanting to get caught up in the minutia of what everybody should have learned in high school lit.
Right.
We're beyond that, and our audience doesn't have to be beyond that to gain from what we have to say.
So are we saying that, well, here's the thing. Let's just be honest. When you say that, Jake, we start to feel insecure because it makes us sound like pompous jerks that just want to be like smarter than everybody.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a pompous jerk that wants to be... Brandon, do you want to be a pompous jerk that wants to be smarter than everybody?
I mean, I don't want to be.
He can't help it that he is smarter than everybody.
Let me start with the kind of podcast that I like. I would actually like the Bookening, and it's not because I would always be on the same page with the people that are doing the Bookening. It's not because I would always be keeping up, but I actually would prefer personally to listen to, I dare say, oh man, how do you say this without sounding pompous? But what I want, whether we can argue about whether we achieve it, but what I like in a podcast is to listen to smart, articulate, funny, interesting people talk And if they're a little bit beyond me, a little bit ahead of me, so much the better. Mm-hmm. It's fun to keep up. It's fun to try and fill in the blanks. It's fun to go on Wikipedia and look up those references that I don't know. That's always the kind of thing that I've liked and appreciated. I've always liked stuff that's a little bit more dense. Oh gosh, how do we talk about this without sounding pompous? I've always liked stuff that's a little bit more dense, a little more smart, a little bit more for the educated,
sophisticated
hip man. Well, for example, here's a very not smart-sounding example. As a kid, I really liked The Simpsons, and it was because their frame of reference was so wide, and their jokes would be about so many things, and I wouldn't get them. But it was always fun to like look up. Oh, what was that movie that they were spoofing? I knew it was funny because Homer was doing a funny voice or something, but what was the reference? And to learn about that stuff.
Okay.
We're pompous jerks. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we are pompous jerks.
And we don't care about anyone.
Bring it.
We hate you, basically.
We hate you. We don't want you to be able to keep up. We certainly don't want you to learn anything from the podcast. We just want you to bask in how much smarter we are
than you. And if you like that sort of thing, then great. Be our disciple.
There we go. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. All right. This podcast was born from three friends sitting on a back porch talking about Flannery O'Connor and having some fun doing it, and realizing that we had something unique maybe to bring to the great conversation. But if you look at the podcasts, the world is full of literature podcasts on the grammar, on the hows, on the structure, on every aspect of literature and storytelling. There are podcasts that cover it in detail. There are books and books and books and books and books. And if we're talking about classic literature, you can go and buy Spark Notes. You can go and buy, what's the other one?
Well, that's the thing. The thing is, you don't have to buy, actually.
You just look on the internet.
One or two Google clicks away from being able to look up what the theme is, who the characters are.
And it's all been analyzed and put out there before. It's by people who are better at that sort of thing than we are. And it's not that we can't do it. It's just that, when we come to a book, we were all more or less taught well in terms of seeing plot, seeing character, seeing themes and structure in books. And so we want to talk about what's more than that. Our conversations are just going to tend to gloss over some of that more basic stuff.
Well, I can't necessarily articulate in one sentence right off the top of my head what the why is for the Bookening, but I can articulate the why for a lot of what we do through our podcasts and stuff on Warhorn Media. And I think what me and Jake have always said to each other, and what other people have said, is we want to not just teach people what to think. We want to teach people how to think.
That's right.
And so a large part of the Bookening is actually, and this is why, if somebody has ever wondered about why we have 5 minutes of just being friends at the beginning of every episode and why we go off on some tangents. A large part of the Bookening is about the chemistry between the three of us. It is about how our brains work when we put our three brains in a room together. And it's about you as a listener. I mean, not to get too meta or weird about it, but it's about you listening to that, entering into that, being part of that conversation with us, and just seeing how we process.
Yeah.
And learning and taking from that in whatever way is valuable, I hope, to you.
We hope that in the course of our conversation, you have space as a listener to interject and say, wait, I don't agree with that. Wait a minute. I'm not sure I'm buying what he's saying right there. But the point is, and that's why we have a lot of back and forth, a lot of, we're not just like, we have not distilled what we thought. Often we don't even come knowing exactly what we think about a book. We're going to talk it out. And that's part of the process. And that's part of the show is working through that together and finding our way to some conclusions about these books.
And I'm not saying we always get it right.
Live on the air.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that what a great teacher does, Brandon? I mean, I'm not saying we can argue about whether we're doing great or not, but just as a vision for what we want to do. I mean, when you go into a classroom, don't you want to get the students talking and thinking?
Yeah, you want to get
processing?
them engaged and thinking about the book. So I had two thoughts about it all.
Yeah.
One is what you were saying. We often don't know what we think before we approach the conversation.
Right.
We don't talk this all out and have like a script.
Right.
We're talking about the books together. We're actually working out the books and what we think of it on the podcast. So you're hearing that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we approach that conversation is we do the context episodes.
Right.
and where I try to draw out some themes and stuff that might be useful.
Hopefully we give you enough material there to anchor you so you actually don't have to go Google stuff if you don't want to. You have basically the bare bones of what you need.
And we have had some people say, well, it'd be useful to have at least a quick sketch of what the book was about.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do that. But that's because we're assuming either A, you can go and read a Wikipedia on it, or B, you can read the book.
Or read the back of the book.
Or read the back of the book, get some sense of what it's about.
Yeah.
But if people want kind of just the way I approach context is I first give the bio of the author, the way the book fits into their history, and then the way that the book fits into literary history. And then at the end, I try to draw out one or two important themes that might help our conversation.
Right.
That's the way I approach context. So you do get a little bit of that with context. And that's what a teacher does. And then we hopefully push it past that when we actually start talking about the book to apply either those things or apply just general knowledge we have of literature. But it's assumed that you can either get that from other places, but that's not what our podcast is about. We're about the actual action of criticism and thinking about a book.
Right.
That's what this podcast is.
I don't want you to walk away from this podcast knowing exactly what to think about Of Mice and Men. I want you to know how you might begin to think for yourself about Of Mice and Men, which I guess may sound high and mighty. And again, I'm not saying we always get it right or do it well. I'm just saying that's what I want the show to be at the end of the day. So let's actually take the case study of Mice and Men. How did we approach that, and why did our episode end up being kind of short and having Nathan admitting that he didn't have a lot to say about it, and everybody, I guess, I don't know, he didn't call you guys out, but I guess you didn't have so much to say about it that he felt like he got his money's worth.
Well, I would say one, I think that we kind of addressed that issue in our Old Man and the Sea conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about why Old Man and the Sea is more successful than Of Mice and Men, and there we talk about how Of Mice and Men has this overly straightforward allegory fable that it's trying to do, and it really is just exactly what it says in the book.
Right.
And it's kind of unsuccessful in many ways, and we talked about that. And so it literally, to answer Eric's question about that book, there's just not a whole lot to say beyond just reading the book.
Right.
And like I said, we don't do that here. We don't give a detailed analysis of every step of the book, because you can get that from Spark Notes or Wikipedia or just by reading it. And beyond that, the book really is just about what it says, and there's not a whole lot to do with it beyond that. So,
well, let me be the devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Should I listen to your podcast if I'm a high school student, or if I'm new to literature, or if I actually need a little bit more of the Spark Notes? Like, obviously, you guys aren't saying that stuff's bad. You are saying your show maybe does something a little else. Should I listen?
Well, to go back to the teaching metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
When I have to teach a group of students where you have some honors students, and you also then have some students who aren't honors students. You have some students who are getting ready to go to AP Lit. You have some students who aren't, and they never will. They just want to be a scientist or something else. They don't want to do that higher level thinking with literature, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I teach to the AP students.
Right.
I don't teach to the students who don't want to go to AP Lit, in the sense that I will still grade the ones who are not trying to get into AP Lit a little, not as quite as hard, because I know they don't want to do that. But I still teach to the AP Lit students, and I try to model for them what good AP Lit thinking will look like, knowing that those who are not interested in that are still going to benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer is, yeah, you should go and get that knowledge from somewhere else, knowing that you could still, though, benefit from the conversations we're having here.
Right.
Because, like Jake said, we're modeling good thinking about books, the way that someone who has those tools already in their tool belt of literary thinking are going. So we already have those things, and now we're approaching the books in a certain way, the way that a mature thinker about literature will approach it.
Mm-hmm. And we're not just trying to model good literary thinking, we're trying to model good Christian thinking.
Yes.
Right.
And that's the other side of this whole thing, that we bring a moral, it's a better word than compass.
Worldview, outlook, moral.
We bring moral authority to the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
We bring Christianity into the equation.
Right.
Because books don't just teach, books essentially are moral teachers.
Yeah, which is part of our philosophy, because I'll try to be careful saying this, but a lot of the other podcasts you can listen to that would be even in the same category as Christian or somewhat Christian, they still approach literature from this perspective where they're glorifying literature without actually, and so they just like take the transcendental nature of literature for granted.
Right.
On the Bookening, we're willing to question that.
Not just question it.
Kind of tear it apart and kick it, yeah. So we don't just take guys like Dickens or guys like Lewis Carroll for granted that they deserve to be a part of the canon.
Right.
We're going to question that, and we're going to poke it, and we're going to say, okay, we remember that these were men writing books. that they weren't gods, that they weren't demigods and anything like that. They were men writing books, and that they deserved to be analyzed and treated as men, given the dignity of that approach, right?
Yeah.
And we can do that because we're all at stages of our life where we now have that, weight, authority, where we can do that. And people may not like that. It may rub you the wrong way, but it's the difference between a high school student who needs to be trained how to do that versus men who are at a position in their life where they can.
I think a high school student can benefit from just simply shutting up and watching some people do that. I hope that doesn't sound high-handed, but I love criticism as a form. I love reading criticism. I like writing criticism. I like doing criticism in podcast form. I just have always liked criticism. And my favorite criticism has always been the criticism where the critic is ahead of me, where he knows more than I do, where he brings authority and weight, and also where he brings himself. And that's what the way I try to lead us is I want, I think I've quoted this before. Roger Ebert has a little quote that he used to say, which was, a man goes to the movies, a critic must remember that he is that man. And so I just always think it's just simply, if for no other reason, I just think it's more interesting to say who we are and where we're coming from it. Like, I think you can learn more and have a more interesting podcast if you know not just what does a general person think about Of Mice and Men, but no, actually what Nathan thinks is more interesting, what Jake thinks is more interesting, what Brandon thinks is more interesting than us trying to play the so-called objective observer of all of this. Like, that's not the kind, I would not want to listen to a podcast where someone was just like, here is the supposed right answer that is outside of us all. Because actually, not to be too subjective or relativistic or anything like that, but, I was bored by Of Mice and Men. And shouldn't you want to know that? But when you're going to hear my take on Of Mice and Men, and isn't it more interesting for you as a listener to hear that? May disagree with that, but for me personally, I do think it's more interesting and more telling, and I can get more out of criticism that starts with, okay, here's the objective reality. Now here's how I felt about it. Now, how do I put those two together? Well, like maybe, for example, Nathan was wrong to be bored. That's entirely possible. But if Nathan starts by admitting that he's bored, and then we have to work through why he was wrong, that's going to get us to a more interesting, telling, informative place than if Nathan simply pretends not to be bored because you're not supposed to be bored by these things.
Well, and one thing I've seen, this goes back to teaching, from the best teachers I've had to just trying to teach students myself, I'm more successful when I show enthusiasm and feeling towards a book. Students can pick up on that, and I've noticed a lot. I have some friends who like particular books, I think, only because they had a teacher who loved those books and has instilled that love and enthusiasm in them.
Or movies because they had a dad that loved the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
and so there's a lot of nostalgia.
A sport or a team or whatever, simply because the father figure associated with it loved it.
Right.
Yeah, and it can be a very sensitive issue because they really respected that teacher. And when we come, I know it's happened here, when we come and we attack that book, and I have sympathy for that. I know there are poems I love only because B.H. Fairchild, who was one of my teachers, loved them so much.
Right.
And I remember the way he thought about those poems and taught those poems. I go back to those poems now and I think, well, maybe they're not quite as good as I thought, but I still remember his love for them. And I respected him so much as a teacher. So what I'm trying to say is that I think with our enthusiasm and our talking about the way that we feel and think about books that way, it matters because we are modeling how that sort of thing does matter with art and with literature.
Right.
And it is very powerful, and it can teach you to be careful. I think it should teach you to be careful who you allow yourself to train your feelings.
Yeah, but your feelings are never out of the equation. I guess maybe that's a simpler way of saying what I was just saying is that...
Well, no, and what readers out there need to do is be able to be honest with themselves about, the books they read and what those books do to them. And I think, what a pointless waste of life to lie to yourself about every book you read because you want to be smart, you want to be sophisticated, you want to just agree and line up with the canon.
But it can take you years to actually figure out how to be honest with yourself. I was just thinking about this with Aladdin. We talked about last week at our other podcast, Sanity at the Movies, you and me, Jake, we talked about Aladdin. And the new Aladdin movie. Also, we obviously talked a little bit about the old 90s Disney Aladdin.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in that theater. I remember exactly what Brandon's talking about, which is that a father figure in my life thought that Robin Williams was really funny. And so I thought that Robin Williams was funny. Now, 10, 15 years later, I realized I don't like that kind of comedy. I don't think Robin Williams is funny. But it took me years. And it's not like it matters one way or another. This is kind of a silly example, but just isn't it funny that I was so shaped by a particular person that I loved's feelings about this, that it actually took me years and years and years to just like actually have for it to even occur to me, like, that doesn't actually make me laugh. Weird. I don't like those references. I don't know.
It lasts a long time.
Yeah. And so to start by being honest with yourself, and not like my dad did anything wrong, not trying to say that, but just to learn to be honest with yourself. And a lot of this comes up for me, I think comes out of the way that my pastor, who's a godly man, has taught me to think about scripture. One thing that our collective pastor will always do is say, how does this passage actually make you feel? Mm-hmm. And is it sinful? Okay, your feelings are bad, but if you can admit that, okay, well, Leviticus has provisions for how a father can sell his daughter into slavery. I hate that. I hate that God included that in his book. I hate that I have to wrestle with that. I really don't like it. I really resent it. And the Bible's full of things like that. That's a really obvious example. There's much more subtle ones. But beginning by acknowledging what I hate, acknowledging what my heart wants to run away from, it allows me to what?
Well, it allows you to deal with yourself and your heart before God.
Right. And to then know the scriptures better and to know God better. Like I would be denying myself essential knowledge of God and of scriptures and of myself if I started by just saying, oh, well, it's God's word. I respect it. Of course, it's great. And I'm not going to admit how I feel. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a corollary there for how we approach literature. If we're going to get at whatever the essential truth about this book, about this story, about this style of writing, about this character, we have to maybe not start, but we have to at least acknowledge at some point in the process how this makes us feel and then incorporate that in and try and decide whether our feelings are accurately reflecting the way that God shaped the world or not.
Yeah. And to not despise that that's a part of thinking about literature, because that's where it gets vague and hazy. And I think we talked about that with Old Man and the Sea too. That makes it hard to talk about literature because a lot of people want it to just be straightforward logic or philosophy or math or science. But that's not, literature gets into other areas. That's what art and poetry and all that sort of stuff does. You have to be comfortable with that because God gave us feeling.
Right. He did. He must have wanted us to use them for something.
Yeah. Doesn't just want you to be a cold, dead, reformed man. Can I say that?
I think there's a certain type of personality who's always going to be frustrated with this show and with us. And it's a very different type of personality than we are. Mm-hmm. That kind of person, literature and art and maybe, emotions aren't really their strong suit. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's just not the way they hit the world. They hit the world hard and objective, and they want the facts and the details. And
nothing wrong with that, by the way.
No, God makes us all different and for different reasons. So if that's the kind of listener you are, I respect the fact that you are here, that you're listening to us, that you're part of this conversation, that you've pushed yourself to grow in places that are not your strengths and that may be weaknesses, that you have trusted us when we've said that literature will help you grow in empathy and emotional intelligence, and we want to be able to help you do that. But at the end of the day, that's not who the three of us are. And that's not the kind of show that we're going to have. There are shows like that out there that simply dissect the art form.
Very analytically, yeah.
Analytically and in a linear, logical way. We think that that can be helpful and useful in its way. We also think there's a way to do that leaves the artwork dead on the operating table.
That's like what E.B. White said about humor. You can dissect it like you can dissect a frog, but the thing dies in the process.
Yeah.
And you just move chapter by chapter or act by act. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what we want to do is, for our own part, bring ourselves to the conversation, like Nathan was saying, and let it be alive, let it be real.
Mm-hmm.
Treat these supposedly classic or great novels as worthy of criticism and worthy of our criticism, and engage them head on. And it's just not going to look like teaching or attempting to teach or equip homeschooling parents with the tools to teach the grammar of storytelling to their 7th graders or 12th graders or anywhere in between. What it is going to look like, I hope, is giving you the tools to have a real meaningful conversation with your 10th grader about this book that they read, that you had them read, and how it made them feel and what that made them think about God and the world and themselves. And I hope that we give you tools in the process as we think through it to think through it for yourself and to think through it with your kids and to say, hey, here's a thing that was just straight up unbiblical and, but it was appealing, wasn't it?
Right.
Like, let's talk about that. Or here's a thing that, actually did a good job of reflecting the way God made the world, or opened up an insight that you can find the Bible opening up in Proverbs. Let's talk about that.
And there's a flip side to that kind of person who has difficulty entering that way. To the person I was becoming right after grad school, God brought me to repentance and stuff like that. It's where you repent too hard, and then you just try to reject all feeling because you think that that was just something of your past. And so you go and I devoted myself to my business, all this stuff and now the Bookening is kind of my repenting in the opposite direction too, finding a balance between the two.
And Brandon quit his PhD program, and threw himself into his business. And I've been trying to convince him to just finish it up because.
And Jake may be winning.
We'll see.
We'll see.
One of the cliffhangers.
But that's the whole background behind that story, and I think that you can repent too hard that way, and you can just become like this fake machismo man, or you hate all literature, so you just devote yourself to like biographies and history.
Right.
Yeah. Well, look, I've been there too. So
yeah.
And so just to tell that person to stop it and realize that God did give you these feelings, and literature is fine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I'm sure we've said many times before, the Bible, for some reason, God made his book into history, law, and then poetry, and then the prophets, who sound a lot like,
poetry,
or even like beat poets, rappers, hip hop. I mean, God saw fit to give his truth, give his grace, give his mercy to us in written form, and he did it in a lot of different ways. I mean, sometimes it is as bifurcated as a law that says, do this, don't do this. Sometimes it's as glorious as a poem that's full of metaphor and image and beauty, and is, I dare say, quite transcendent. And so you got to be able to do both in life. And I don't know. And I just think it's fun. If I make the kind of podcast I'd like to listen to, I hope that people like to listen to this. I understand your mileage may vary, and that's fine. Not everybody's going to be a big Nathan Albertson fan, or big Jake Menzel fan, or big Brandon Chastain fan. I'm sorry, Brandon. Of course, everyone will be a big Brandon Chastain fan.
No, I just like that you were about to leave off the fan and just say that
big Brandon Chastain.
Thanks, Nathan. Your subconscious.
Not everyone's going to be a big Brandon Chastain, but you sure are.
Thank you,
Brandon. You're a very suave, handsome, svelte kind of a gentleman, and everyone loves you, and your wife finds you attractive.
Thank you.
Yeah, fine. That's fine. Go in peace if you don't happen to dig our particular thing. But it is the kind of thing that I would dig. It is the kind of thing that I trust people out there would dig. I like, I just like learning through absorption and through hanging out with people. I like being around people that I think are godly or smart or interesting, and just letting some of that sink in. And so if I had a high school student, I would hope that they would listen to the Bookening, and they might not come away with one solid principle. They would, of course, I would hope, but maybe they wouldn't. But at least a little bit of us and our friendship and the fun that we have and the insights that we have would sink into them, get under their skin, and they'd maybe bring a little bit of it with them into a conversation with someone. And I think that's actually how a lot of moral truth and discipline and things like that in life happen, is you talk to someone and you spend time with someone, and a little bit of what's good about them rubs off on you, or a little bit of what's bad about them rubs off on you. So if there's anything good about us, I hope just by spending time with us every week, maybe it can rub off on somebody. I know that sounds self-aggrandizing, but hey, we're doing a podcast, so we must think that we have some kind of value to offer. And if you agree, then you can listen to the podcast, Brandon.
Hey, I agree, so I guess I'll listen.
You don't have to listen. You get to experience it. Anything else you guys want to say about this subject?
No.
I don't think so.
All right, well, we should do some donor shout-outs then.
Oh, man.
So let me just pull them up. What do you guys want? What kind of donor shout-outs do you guys want to do today? So many different ways we could do donor shout-outs.
Let's just shout them out.
You just want to shout them?
Straightforward.
All right. I'll alternate between the two of you, and you can just shout them. This is going to be a very simple episode, and I love it. Okay. You guys ready for this?
I am.
Yep.
Brandon, Robert, and Rhonda, the Lovebirds.
Robert and Rhonda, the Lovebirds.
The Immortal Chelsea E.
The immortal Chelsea E.
Nathan, not me.
Nathan, not Nathan.
Jimmy Beam and Little Annie Oakley.
Jimmy Beam and Little Annie Oakley.
Lily of the Valley.
Lily of the Valley.
And Ernesto, the Lovebirds.
Andrew and Esther the Lovebirds.
The inscrutable Jenny Z.
The inscrutable Jenny Z.
The Keith Master.
The Keith Master.
John and Jill and Little Baby Max.
John and Jill and Little Baby Max.
David's Mighty Men Trucking.
David's Mighty Men Trucking.
Jay and Katie, who are cold and love cheese.
Jay
as cold as Jake's response to some of my setups for this wonderful donor shout-out segment.
Jay and Katie, who are cold and love cheese.
My beloved mother, Beth.
My beloved Mother Beth.
Adam, the...
Bedraggled Wizard of Yore? No, it's Fletcher.
Fletcher is the bedraggled Wizard of Yore. Adam, I'm sorry if I gave you a cool one. I don't remember what it was. Adam, the Mecha Godzilla of Doom.
Adam, the Mecha Godzilla of Doom. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to be the Mecha Godzilla of Doom. Emily, E-M-I-L-Y, Emily.
Emily, E-M-I-L-Y, Emily.
Fletcher, the woe-bedraggled Wizard of Death. The aforementioned woe-bedraggled Wizard of Death.
I thought it was Yore. Fletcher,
sorry. Yes, you're
the
right.
woe-bedraggled Wizard of Yore.
The Artful Anthony Dodger.
The Artful Anthony Dodger.
Dark-Hooded Lord of Death, Jeremy.
The Dark-Hooded Lord of Death, Jeremy.
The incandescent, lovely, and all-around wonderful Meredith.
The incandescent, lovely, and all-around wonderful Meredith.
Maya.
Maya.
Hi, Maya. Thanks for contributing to our podcast. Ryan, Rockin' Ryan, and Judy.
Rockin' Ryan and Judo Judy.
Danny the Dude.
Danny the Dude.
DJ Sammy G, of course.
DJ Sammy G, wicka.
Benny T and Dana Tiberius.
Benny and Dana Tiberius.
Eric and Catherine the Lovebirds.
Eric and Catherine the Lovebirds.
And, of course, bringing up the rear last but not least, Professor and Lady X.
Professor and Lady X.
How many episodes do you think we've done that and you still get it wrong?
How many episodes do you think I've gotten it right? Is the more...
0.
I think maybe I've
Maybe
led
the
with
first
Professor
one?
once or twice. I don't know. I like to think I have. Guys, is there anything else we want to talk about today?
No. We all had a Memorial Day yesterday.
We sure did.
Was it memorable?
Yep.
It was fun.
Yep.
Memorial Day is actually today.
Today's Memorial Day. But
Right.
we all partied.
We were actually coming in on our
We were
day
at the
off.
Dark-Hooded Lord of Death's house.
Yeah, we went to the Dark-Hooded Lords of Death. He had some pork. It was very delicious.
We played some
Tacos.
wiffle ball.
Wiffle ball was played. Yes, sir.
Yep.
I may or may not have sat inside for most of that with my
By
head on the
two-thirds.
incandescent Meredith's shoulder.
Yeah. By 2/3 of the room, it was played.
Yes, very true. Not much of a sportsman, folks. I'm sorry if that disappoints you.
I'm sure it disappoints so many.
People are throwing their phones across the room right now.
No, Nathan.
No!
I had you as a sportsman.
People had me pegged as a big athlete. All right. Thanks for listening, folks. Bookening today was written and produced by, well, I don't know. It was produced by Nathan. It was written by all of us in the room in an improvisatory manner. And it was executive produced, like all fine Warhorn products, by Nathan and Jake. Brandon, thank you for being here.
You're welcome, Nathan.
As always. Brandon, if you wanted to support the Bookening, which I assume you do, where would you go?
To patreon.com/the Bookening.
What might you sign up for there, Jake?
Oh, any number of reward levels. It seems like one of our most popular reward levels is the $50 reward.
Yeah, people really like that one. What do you get for $50?
Well,
Why do
that's
people
the
like
fun thing is, speaking of which, we need to sign books.
Yes.
You get a book every month. Each month you get a book. The book that we're reading next.
You get it in time to read it.
In time to read it. So we get it. You get it like 2 or 3 months in advance, actually, and you get it signed by 3 of us, each of the 3 of us.
Now, is it just a signature, Jake? Just
Oh
a name
no,
on a piece of
Nathan
paper?
does amazing artwork in each of these, and we write little inscriptions and stuffs, and we think we're very funny and clever when we do that.
And
Sometimes.
will you think the same? Yes, you will.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. Generally, what happens is I get the book first, and depending on how tired or excited I am, I draw a picture. I mean, I draw a picture either way, but the quality of the picture depends on how I'm feeling. And then Brandon and Jake will either write snide comments about my picture or a nugget about the book that you're getting, or both sometimes.
Yep.
Or if you're completely new to us, then Jake might kind of write something like, sorry about the picture. We love you. Please keep supporting us.
Fun additions to your library.
It is a fun additions to your library. Might one day be worth something.
Maybe.
Like 50 cents on Amazon or something like that. And
Get half price.
Hey, but Nathan, is $50 the only amount that people can give to support this show?
No, Jake. They can give a lot more than that. They can give
totally.
100.
Yeah.
And then they can choose a book, which we do have $100 Patreon, and they still need to choose their book. And we'd be more than happy to do it. They just need to choose it. And they can do whatever they want. Louis L'Amour. I'll do Twilight. I don't know. I know we've talked about this before.
$10 gets you the Bookening shout-out, donor shout-out.
Like you just heard before the credits.
$25 gets you a vague promise of a T-shirt that may or may...
Yeah.
Hey, one day you will get a T-shirt, and it will be worth the wait. And what was it going to say? We did decide on that.
I just want to hide in a corner with Tolstoy and pretend the world doesn't exist.
Yeah, so you can get a T-shirt for that. Maybe by next Christmas. I'm sorry, folks. Jake and me, we have a media company to run. We have social media to do. We have 14,000 podcasts that we appear on. Brandon is now appearing on a secondary podcast. We should plug that, by the way. There's a new Warhorn podcast, Sanity at the Movies.
Talk about Star Wars.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a Star Wars series, and it's going to feature our good friend Brandon Chastain. So it'll basically be the Bookening talks about Star Wars. I mean, there's no difference, really.
Not much difference at all, yeah.
Different theme music at the beginning.
That's it.
But if you want to hear...
Different title to the podcast.
Different title to the podcast, yeah, but basically the exact same show. You want to hear Jake, you want to hear me, you want to hear Brandon talk about Star Wars. Brandon also appears on that podcast just on a pretty regular basis, talking about lots of things, but I think for the near foreseeable future, it will be Star Wars mostly.
There we go.
So, and if you wanted to hear me and Jake and Mr. Benjamin Solzer talk about Aladdin, the new Aladdin, we released that last week. And yeah, there's already an episode up about Star Wars, kind of some preliminary thoughts with the three of us.
There is one.
There's fun times, and it kind of builds on some of the things you may have heard the Bookening talk about Star Wars. So...
good crossover right there to get you into that new podcast.
It's a great crossover. If you like the Bookening, I don't know why you wouldn't like Sanity at the Movies, unless you just hate movies. But come on, you're alive, you have eyes, I presume, and live in the 21st century. You probably like movies, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not. Yeah. Anything else people need to know?
I don't think so.
No.
All right. Which category of Patreon do you think that which tier do you think people should sign up for, Jake?
The one that they can go and sign up for right now without thinking about it. $1, $5, $10, $25, $50, whatever it is, you can just go right now and get started. Yeah, you get started. $1 today, $5 today, and then you can upgrade it as you look at it later.
Yeah,
but just go ahead. If you've been sort of debating it, we've been sitting here not getting your money, so.
Right.
Yeah, we got
stop debating it. Go down. Give it $1. Give it $5.
If you believe in the why that we gave you in this, the well articulated statement of purpose that we gave you in this podcast, then you want to support it. And that's not even really a joke. If you want to support the work that we're doing, support the work that Warhorn Media does, trying to teach people how to think in a Christian culture and how to not feel insane.
In a Christian culture, huh?
Nope, false.
In a non-Christian
in a non-Christian culture. That is a crucial thing.
Yeah.
Then go to Patreon today. You can support the Bookening. You can get some fun stuff.
Do it. Yeah.
Do it.
Do it.
And if they get us up to $7.50 a month, we will review.
Is it Narnia or is it Tolkien?
We will do.
Hey, yeah, we're really close. This is last summer we went out. We got Harry Potter in. Mm-hmm. This summer, man, if you get us up to $7, we're less than $100 away, right?
We'll do an episode about
right around $100 a month away from binging Narnia this summer.
Yeah.
Right. And we would love to just drop everything.
All we need is 20 of you to give $5 a month.
Yep.
Would love it.
Didn't we say we'd do something if we got that?
You and me promised something. People have to remember, and
something
we'll be
crazy.
To
it might have been that last episode.
Maybe a behind the paywall show where we read poetry to Brandon's cat or something like that. I don't know.
I forget.
That
sounds really good though.
No, actually, we promised it on Jake's behalf, whatever it was.
Oh yeah, Jake.
You promised that I would do something.
Yeah,
Jake. It had him putting on elf. Oh, that's what it was. He would put on elf ears and read poetry in the original Elvish.
Yeah, that's what it was. If you want to see Jake put on elf ears and read poetry in the original Elvish,
I'll do as good a job as I do of following Nathan's vocal cues on donor shoutouts.
Yeah,
vocal prompts. Yeah,
get us to what?
$7.50 by the end of June.
So Jake's going to dress in as an elf for our Narnia series.
Yes, it's a promise.
And I'm going to read Narnia in the original Elvish.
Yeah.
It's going to be
We need
fantastic.
someone to translate Narnia into Elvish.
The fun thing is that
Somebody can, I'm sure.
I have zero doubt that we can probably go on Google and within 5 minutes find at least a section of Narnia that's in Elvish.
Oh, yeah.
It's-
If they can get us there in 2 weeks, maybe Jake would be willing to dress as an elf, dress like Elvis, and read it with Elvis's accent. In
Elvis
Elvish.
Jake?
Elvis.
Elvis Jake.
All right. Yeah, if you folks want to meet Elvis Jake
2 weeks.
By June.
by June, they have to get to what, 750? Or is it just 7?
That's like 3 days. Wait, this podcast is already
Already out. This podcast won't be out by then.
That's right.
By July. So they'll have
I was trying, man.
they'll have less than a month.
All right, July.
By the time they hear this, to get to 700?
750.
750. Okay, and then Jake has to try. So some of that money will be going towards buying an Elvis costume, and renting, and some elf ears.
But hey, it will be worth it.
It will be. Oh man, folks, doesn't that sound like fun? It's fun to make people like Jake do things like that, and that's kind of the gimmick behind making you give money. So do it.
As we just explained.
We just explained. So, all right. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with what's coming after Old Man and Agatha Christie, my favorite.